Many people live trapped by yesterday. They wake up every morning carrying the weight of what they once did, what they once were, and what people still think of them. They believe their past mistakes have written the final chapter of their lives. But understand this clearly: your past does not define your future. In faith, transformation is not only possible, it is promised. And even from a human perspective, there are principles that, when practiced, change how people look at you, treat you, and respect you. One of the greatest secrets of respect is this: when you heal yourself internally, people feel it externally. A person who has made peace with their past walks differently. They speak differently. They do not beg for validation because they are no longer at war with themselves. When you stop hating who you used to be and start honoring who you are becoming, people naturally begin to honor you too. Respect does not begin in the mouths of others, it begins in your own heart. Another powerful secret is emotional control. Not every insult needs a response. Not every accusation needs a defense. When you learn to pause, to remain calm, and to choose silence over chaos, people start listening when you finally speak. Loud reactions often reduce respect, but quiet confidence increases it. Those who control their emotions control the situation, and those who control the situation are respected. Consistency is another pillar. People may remember your past, but they believe what they repeatedly see. If your character remains firm, if your values do not change with convenience, and if your actions consistently reflect growth, the past loses its power. Respect grows when people realize that change is not temporary but permanent. One good day does not erase a bad history, but a good direction does. Then there is the secret of boundaries. When you value yourself, you do not allow yourself to be used, mocked, or manipulated. Boundaries are not arrogance, they are self-respect. People may resist your boundaries at first, especially if they benefited from your weakness before. But over time, they adjust. And when they adjust, respect follows. Finally, growth is the ultimate proof. The most respected people are not those who never fell, but those who fell, learned, and rose with humility. When people see you improving spiritually, emotionally, and morally, they are forced to update their opinion of you. Growth silences criticism more effectively than arguments ever could. So never believe that your mistakes have disqualified you. Never assume that labels placed on you years ago must follow you forever. You are not who you were, you are who you choose to become. Walk with dignity. Heal your heart, control your reactions, stay consistent, set boundaries, and keep growing. When you do this, respect follows you, not because you demanded it, but because you earned it. Many people underestimate how deeply self-respect and inner healing influence the way they are treated by others. They believe respect is something that must be demanded, enforced, or negotiated through status, wealth, or loud confidence. In reality, respect begins much earlier and much deeper in the private space of the heart. When a person carries unresolved guilt, shame, or self-hatred from their past, it quietly leaks into their posture, their speech, and their decisions. Even without saying a word, they communicate insecurity, and the world responds accordingly. This is why inner healing is not a luxury. It is a necessity for anyone who wants to be respected. A person who has not made peace with their past often lives in apology mode. They over-explain, overgive, and overcompensate because they feel they must earn their place. Psychologically, this signals low self-worth. People may not consciously identify it, but they sense it. When someone does not value themselves, others subconsciously mirror that valuation. This is not cruelty, it is human behavior. Respect flows naturally toward those who appear settled within themselves, not those who are constantly seeking approval or forgiveness for existing. Inner healing begins when a person accepts that mistakes are part of being human, not proof of permanent failure. Carrying the burden of old sins or regrets long after change has occurred only keeps a person stuck. When someone truly repents, learns, and grows, continuing to punish oneself serves no benefit. Letting go of excessive self-blame creates emotional stability, and emotional stability creates presence. A stable person is not easily shaken, and people instinctively respect those who are not easily shaken. Self-respect also changes the way a person speaks. When you respect yourself, your words become measured rather than desperate. You do not rush to justify every decision or defend every rumor. You understand that your worth is not on trial in every conversation. This calm assurance is powerful. People listen more closely to those who speak from a place of inner security. Even disagreement becomes respectful when it is delivered without bitterness or fear. Another important aspect of self-respect is the courage to walk away from what diminishes you. When someone remains in environments, relationships, or behaviors that repeatedly harm them, it sends a message that their well-being is negotiable. Psychologically, this invites disregard. On the other hand, when a person chooses dignity over familiarity, even at a personal cost, it signals strength. Others may not like the decision, but they recognize it. Respect often grows quietly in moments where approval is lost. Inner healing also reduces the need for comparison. Many people lose respect because they constantly measure themselves against others, which leads to jealousy, insecurity, or imitation. When you are at peace with who you are, you no longer compete for attention or validation. You celebrate others without feeling threatened. This emotional maturity is rare, and rarity attracts respect. People trust those who are not driven by envy because they feel safe around them. A healed person also takes responsibility without self-destruction. They can acknowledge wrongdoing without collapsing into shame. This balance is crucial. When someone denies all fault, they appear arrogant. When someone accepts fault but drowns in guilt, they appear weak. The respected individual stands in the middle, accountable yet dignified. This shows emotional intelligence, and emotional intelligence is one of the strongest predictors of respect in both personal and professional relationships. Self-respect further influences how boundaries are maintained. A person who values themselves does not need to threaten or manipulate to protect their space. Their boundaries are calm, consistent, and clear. Over time, people learn what is acceptable and what is not. Even those who initially resist begin to adjust because consistency reshapes expectations. Respect is built when boundaries are enforced without anger and without apology. Perhaps most importantly, inner healing frees a person from living in reaction to their past. When old wounds dictate present behavior, life becomes defensive. Decisions are made out of fear rather than principle. But when healing occurs, actions are guided by values. People respect values because values are predictable. They know where you stand, even if they do not always agree with you. Predictability rooted in principle creates trust, and trust is the foundation of lasting respect. In the end, self-respect is not about perfection, and inner healing is not about erasing the past. It is about integrating the past without allowing it to dominate the present. When a person reaches this state, they no longer try to convince the world of their worth. They live it quietly. And in that quiet confidence, respect follows naturally. Emotional control is one of the most misunderstood strengths in human behavior. Many people assume that respect comes from being outspoken, assertive at all times, or immediately defending oneself against every perceived attack. In reality, psychology shows that restraint often commands more respect than reaction. When a person learns to manage their emotions rather than be managed by them, they project stability, maturity, and authority. This kind of presence is felt even before words are spoken, and it directly influences how seriously others take you. When emotions run unchecked, they tend to expose vulnerabilities. Anger, panic, defensiveness, and excessive excitement all reveal that a person has lost internal balance. Observers may not consciously analyze this, but they register it. Someone who reacts impulsively appears predictable and easy to provoke. Once people realize they can control your emotional state, they lose a degree of respect because power has shifted away from you. Emotional control restores that balance by keeping authority internal rather than external. Silence plays a powerful role in emotional mastery. Silence is not weakness, it is choice. When you do not respond immediately, you give yourself space to think rather than react. This pause disrupts expectations. Many confrontations rely on predictable emotional responses to escalate. When those responses do not come, the dynamic changes, the other person becomes uncertain, and uncertainty shifts control. Psychologically, the individual who remains calm in tense moments is often perceived as the stronger one. This does not mean suppressing emotions or pretending not to feel. True emotional control is awareness, not denial. It is recognizing anger without letting it dictate speech and acknowledging hurt without allowing it to turn into bitterness. People respect those who can experience strong emotions internally while maintaining composure externally. This balance reflects emotional intelligence, a trait consistently associated with leadership and respect across cultures and environments. Another critical element of emotional control is the ability to listen without interruption. Many people speak over others because they feel threatened or misunderstood. This behavior signals insecurity. When someone listens fully, even to criticism, it shows confidence. They are not afraid of opposing views because their identity is not fragile. Being heard is deeply valued, and people naturally respect those who offer that space without immediately turning the conversation into a defense of self. Emotional restraint also prevents regret. Words spoken in anger cannot be retrieved, and apologies do not always repair the damage they cause. Over time, a person known for emotional outbursts becomes someone others approach cautiously or avoid altogether. Respect erodes not because of disagreement, but because unpredictability creates discomfort. In contrast, a person who responds thoughtfully earns a reputation for wisdom. People seek their opinion, not their reaction. There is also a spiritual and psychological dimension to emotional control that strengthens respect. A calm response in the face of provocation communicates that your self-worth is not dependent on winning every argument. You do not need to dominate conversations to feel validated. This humility is not submissive, it is grounded. Those who are secure do not rush to prove themselves. Their stillness speaks louder than confrontation. Emotional control further allows a person to choose their battles wisely. Not every issue deserves your energy, and not every comment requires a reply. When you engage selectively, your involvement carries more weight. People notice that when you speak, it is intentional. Scarcity increases value, even in communication. Constant reaction dilutes influence, while measured response amplifies it. From a psychological standpoint, humans associate calmness under pressure with competence. In stressful situations, people instinctively look to the individual who remains composed. That person becomes an anchor. Even without formal authority, they are often deferred to because their emotional stability suggests reliability. Respect naturally flows toward those who can steady others by first steadying themselves. Ultimately, emotional control is an act of self-respect. It is the decision not to hand your inner peace to someone else's behavior or words. When you protect your emotional state, you protect your dignity. Over time, people learn that you cannot be easily provoked or manipulated, and this realization reshapes how they treat you. Respect grows not from loud reactions, but from quiet strength that remains intact regardless of circumstance. Consistency of character is one of the most powerful yet overlooked forces in shaping how people perceive and respect you. Many individuals hope that a single impressive action, emotional speech, or visible achievement will erase a difficult past or change public opinion overnight. Psychology, however, teaches a different lesson. Human beings trust patterns more than promises. They observe behavior over time, not isolated moments. Respect is rarely granted because of one good decision. It is earned through repeated alignment between values, words, and actions. When a person's behavior fluctuates depending on mood, company, or convenience, it creates uncertainty. Uncertainty weakens trust, and without trust, respect cannot take root. Even if someone has sincere intentions, inconsistency confuses observers. People do not know which version of you to expect, and as a result, they remain cautious. On the other hand, when your conduct remains steady across situations, people feel safe around you. Safety, psychologically, is a prerequisite for respect because it signals reliability. This is particularly important for those who carry a difficult past. Mistakes leave memories, and memories take time to be replaced. Trying to argue people out of their perceptions rarely works. What works is consistency. When your actions repeatedly contradict old assumptions, the mind is forced to update its narrative. This does not happen through words or explanations, but through time and repetition. Each consistent action weakens the grip of the past until it no longer defines the present. Consistency also demonstrates integrity. Integrity is not perfection, it is alignment. When what you believe, what you say, and what you do move in the same direction, people recognize it. Even those who disagree with your values may still respect you for holding them firmly. Inconsistency, by contrast, suggests compromise without principle. It signals that values are flexible when pressure increases, and such flexibility erodes respect because it implies unreliability. Another psychological aspect of consistency is predictability. Predictability rooted in principle is not boring, it is reassuring. People know where you stand. They know what behavior to expect from you in difficult moments. This clarity reduces anxiety in relationships and interactions. When people do not have to guess your reactions or intentions, they trust you more. Trust, over time, matures into respect. Consistency also protects a person from emotional manipulation. When your responses are guided by values rather than impulse, others find it difficult to provoke or control you. This emotional steadiness commands respect because it shows self-mastery. People may test boundaries initially, especially if inconsistency existed in the past. But when your standards do not shift even under pressure, those tests eventually stop. What remains is acknowledgement of strength. From a psychological standpoint, repeated behavior creates identity. Others define you not by what you claim to be, but by what you repeatedly demonstrate. If kindness, honesty, humility, and responsibility are shown consistently, they become associated with your name. Over time, this association becomes automatic. When your name is mentioned, these traits come to mind. This is how reputations are rebuilt and strengthened. Consistency also demands patience, which itself is a respected trait. Many people abandon positive change when immediate recognition does not follow. They become discouraged when their efforts go unnoticed. However, sustained character does not depend on applause. It continues quietly. Observers may remain silent, but they are watching. Psychology confirms that people often wait to see if change lasts before they respond to it. When it does, respect follows naturally. It is also important to understand that consistency applies most strongly in moments of difficulty. Anyone can behave well when circumstances are easy. True character is revealed when comfort disappears, when pressure, loss, or criticism arises and your values remain intact. The impact is profound. People may not say anything, but internally their assessment of you changes. They begin to see you as dependable regardless of circumstance. Consistency does not mean rigidity. Growth is still possible within consistency. The difference is that growth follows a direction rather than randomness. A person may evolve, mature, and refine their understanding, but the core principles remain visible. This balance between growth and stability increases respect because it shows wisdom rather than stubbornness. Ultimately, people may remember your past, but they live with your present. The present, when consistently aligned with strong character, slowly replaces old impressions. Over time, consistency becomes evidence, and evidence speaks louder than history, reshaping perception until respect is no longer questioned but assumed. Boundaries and dignity play a central role in shaping how others treat you, and psychology makes it clear that respect often follows the standards you set for yourself. Many people struggle with boundaries because they confuse them with harshness or fear that setting limits will make them appear unkind or arrogant. In reality, the absence of boundaries does far more damage to respect than their presence. When a person allows others unrestricted access to their time, emotions, and energy, it subtly communicates that their needs are secondary. Over time, this message is absorbed and treatment adjusts accordingly. When boundaries are weak or inconsistent, people learn that consequences are minimal. They may interrupt, dismiss, or take advantage without even intending harm. This is not always driven by malice. Often it is the result of unclear expectations. Psychology shows that humans adapt to the limits they are given. If there are no clear limits, behavior expands to fill the space. Respect diminishes not because the person lacks value, but because their value is not clearly protected. Dignity begins with self-perception. When you see yourself as worthy of respect, your behavior naturally reflects it. You speak with intention rather than desperation. You choose where to invest your energy instead of scattering it everywhere. This internal valuation influences external interactions. People tend to treat you in accordance with how you treat yourself. When you tolerate disrespect, you unintentionally teach others that disrespect is acceptable. One of the most challenging aspects of boundaries is enforcing them without hostility. Many people swing between two extremes, silence and explosion. They endure discomfort until it becomes unbearable, then react emotionally. This pattern weakens respect because it signals a lack of control. Consistent, calm boundaries are far more effective. When limits are communicated clearly and upheld without anger, they establish stability. Others may test these limits initially, but consistency reshapes behavior over time. Dignity also involves the ability to say no without excessive explanation. Over-explaining often stems from guilt or fear of rejection. Psychologically, this diminishes authority. A simple, respectful refusal communicates confidence. It signals that your time and energy are valuable. People may not always like being told no, but they understand it. Over time, they respect those who are selective rather than endlessly accommodating. Another important element of dignity is refusing to engage in interactions that degrade your values. This includes gossip, humiliation, manipulation, or emotional games. When you step away from such dynamics, you protect your integrity. Even if others criticize or misunderstand your decision, the long-term effect is positive. People recognize that you cannot be drawn into behavior that compromises your standards. This restraint elevates how you are perceived. Boundaries also influence emotional respect. When you do not allow others to provoke uncontrolled reactions, you maintain psychological distance. This distance is not coldness, it is balance. Emotional availability without self-protection leads to burnout and resentment. Emotional availability with boundaries fosters healthy respect. People feel your presence without feeling entitled to you. It is important to understand that setting boundaries may initially lead to resistance, especially from those who benefited from the absence of boundaries in the past. This resistance is not a sign that you are wrong. It is evidence that change is occurring. Psychology explains that when established patterns are disrupted, discomfort follows. If you remain consistent and dignified, resistance eventually turns into adjustment. Respect often arrives quietly after this phase. Dignity also shapes how you handle conflict. When disagreements arise, a dignified person does not resort to insults, threats, or humiliation. They address issues directly and respectfully. This approach communicates strength without aggression. Even in conflict, dignity preserves respect because it demonstrates self-control and fairness. Boundaries are not walls that isolate you. They are guidelines that define healthy interaction. They allow you to give without being drained and to connect without losing yourself. People trust those who know where they stand. This clarity reduces confusion and tension, creating an environment where respect can grow naturally. Ultimately, boundaries and dignity are not about controlling others. They are about controlling access to yourself. When you protect your values, time, and emotional being, you send a clear message about your worth. Over time, people align their behavior with that message, and respect becomes a natural outcome rather than a forced demand. Growth, repentance, and transformation form one of the strongest foundations of respect, both psychologically and spiritually. People often assume that respect is reserved for those who have lived flawless lives, but in reality, human beings are deeply moved by visible change. Psychology shows that transformation commands attention because it signals effort, self-awareness, and courage. A person who recognizes their flaws and actively works to improve them communicates strength, not weakness. This process reshapes how others perceive them, regardless of their past. Repentance begins with honesty. It requires a person to look at themselves without denial or excuses. This level of self-awareness is rare, and rarity draws respect. When someone admits they were wrong and then takes responsibility for correcting their behavior, it disrupts expectations. Many people expect defensiveness or justification. When neither appears and is replaced with accountability, the observer is forced to reassess their judgment. Respect grows because authenticity is revealed. Transformation is not proven by words, but by changed patterns. People may forgive apologies quickly, but they trust consistency slowly. When improvement is visible over time, skepticism fades. Psychology explains that sustained behavioral change challenges cognitive bias. Once others see that old habits no longer define your reactions, choices, or priorities, their perception adjusts. They may not announce it, but internally they begin to treat you differently. Growth also requires patience. Some people become discouraged when their efforts to change are not immediately acknowledged. They expect instant validation, but respect does not operate on demand. Observers often wait to see if change lasts before responding. When you continue to grow quietly without demanding recognition, it signals sincerity. This patience strengthens respect because it shows that improvement is for personal integrity, not public approval. A crucial part of growth is humility. Transformation that is accompanied by arrogance cancels its own impact. When a person constantly reminds others of how much they have changed, it shifts attention away from the change itself. True growth is calm. It does not need to announce itself. People are more likely to respect transformation when it is paired with humility, because humility reassures them that the person has not simply replaced one flaw with another. Growth also refines judgment. As a person matures, they become less reactive and more reflective. They choose responses carefully and consider long-term consequences. This shift is noticeable. Others begin to see them as thoughtful rather than impulsive. Psychology associates thoughtful behavior with wisdom, and wisdom naturally attracts respect. People seek guidance from those who have learned from their mistakes rather than those who pretend they never had any. Repentance and growth also free a person from defensiveness. When you accept your past, you no longer feel threatened by reminders of it. This emotional freedom is powerful. People lose leverage over you when your history no longer controls your emotions. Calm acceptance without self-condemnation communicates strength. It tells others that you are no longer defined by what you were, but by what you are becoming. Transformation also influences the kind of relationships a person attracts. Growth naturally distances you from environments that reinforce old behaviors. As you change, your standards change. This may lead to temporary loneliness, but it also leads to healthier connections. People who value growth recognize it in others. When such individuals begin to associate with you, it reinforces respect because social environments reflect personal evolution. Another psychological aspect of growth is resilience. People respect those who recover from failure without becoming bitter. When setbacks occur and you continue moving forward with purpose, it shows emotional strength. Resilience reassures others that you can be trusted under pressure. They see that mistakes do not destroy you and success does not inflate you. This balance strengthens credibility. Ultimately, growth and repentance are ongoing processes, not milestones. Respect does not come from claiming to have arrived, but from demonstrating commitment to continue improving. When people see that you are still learning, still refining yourself, and still striving to be better than yesterday, their perception shifts. Your past loses its power, not because it is erased, but because it is outweighed by consistent transformation that speaks louder than memory.